people that would stand at the fringe and glean knowledge, even if we weren't there competing. So for the gleaners of knowledge, we're going to record it and be able to put those out later. But I start with a little spiel and then we go from there. Are we ready, Paula?
We are ready. We are recording.
Thank you, Paula. Welcome everybody to the Theatrical Design State Contest. And I know it feels weird, we're not in person, but this is absolutely still a fabulous celebration of all of your hard work during unforeseen circumstances like no other. So we are so, so proud that you are here. This is a celebration of you and your hard work. And we wanted you to have this opportunity to be able to meet the judges who saw your work and to hear from them and to get to know them in some way. And it's not going to be your individual critiques. If you thought that's what you were logging on for, it's not. Those are going to come in your ballots that are going to come out after awards on Monday. But this is a time for you. It's to celebrate you. It's to be able to have that opportunity to learn in the moments and hear the kinds of things that were working well and get tips and hints for what can work for you in the future. And we're very, very honored today to have your three judges. We have Rosa Lazaro. She can wave at you right now. She is from Texas A&M Corpus Christi, and she's got all kinds of titles. She's been with us at UIL Theatrical Design. I kind of like to call her the queen, and because she's judged so many different areas of this, and she does it so well, and she has such a heart for it that we have Rosa. We recruited Kevin also because it's like, hey, he wants to do this stuff too, and he's come and helped us out with this. He only knows the virtual contest because he's had to do virtual now before, but Rosa remembers the good old days. Like, you know what, because we're virtual, we brought this guy all the way from New York and we didn't even have to pay the travel bills. And so that's been an exciting thing for us. So you've got Wilbur that's helping you out that way. And they are such neat people to share their hearts and their love for what they do with you. And we're honored to have them here today to present their information. And so I'm going to let Rosa start off and then you guys can jump in from there. And also, audience, if you would like to insert questions and things like that, you can put them in the chat if you would like to, but also we'll be having time, like if there's things that you'd like to ask about, you're certainly able to do so. We're lucky that we're in this kind of small, intimate group. All right, speaking of group, Rosa, take it away.
Please ask questions, because that's what we're here for, is the educational part of this whole I feel like they're festivals even more than competitions. But I want to start out by saying thank you. Thank you so much for going forth and doing this. Of you have been home the whole time, and thank your parents, thank your friends, whoever helped you to execute your designs, to be models for you as you drew, to help you hash out ideas. Your coaches are amazing people, and they are there as such huge supports. I want to thank everybody who is in your life and supported you through this, because I am sure this has been difficult for everyone. And I want you to know that we are so excited to be celebrating theater with you now. So that's what I kind of want to say, is how thankful I am that we continued, that we were able to find ways to do this. And even if it's virtual, it's very exciting. Your work has been a delight to look over. So much talent in the state of Texas. I say it over and over again. Thank goodness for Texas, because they are saving American theater. You guys don't even know that your state, coming from outside of Texas. I've worked professionally all over the country. I run into so many people who are excellent designers, amazing actors, and they're all saying, oh, I'm from Texas. I'm from Texas. And I love it. I absolutely love it. So thank you so much. And thank your parents, thank your coaches for bringing you here too. So that's where I want to start off, is by thanking everyone and letting the other adjudicators say something as well.
You go. No, nose goes what? No.
I mean, you just said so many nice things that I don't even think I can top that. So agreed. Congratulations to all of you for all the hard work you put into everything you did. I mean, I can't imagine trying to do this during quarantine, or trying to prep a show and in contact with everybody when but having the ability to create and showcase the amount of work that you guys did is incredible. So you guys should be really proud. And we're really proud of all of you. So congratulations. I'll leave it.
Go Kevin.
Yeah, it's hard to find anything else to say. It's hard enough, I think, for us to design when we're working with people who are all over the country, and we're used to that process. So to try and do that at your age during a pandemic, and it's you have this added pressure of a competition. It's my gosh, it must be so hard, and to do classes, and so you can just keep going and adding in all of the pressure to do this. But it's so wonderful that you kept doing it, and I just feel so lucky that we get to look at all your hard work and talk to you about it. What the next generation of talent is. So congratulations.
So that being said, I really, one thing that I love about the UIL design competition is the fact that there's so much freedom in it. You're not worried about budgets. You're not worried about the things that sometimes stifle us creatively. You're able to actually come up with some really amazing artwork. Some of the Don Quixote artwork I had never seen, and I was like, this is beautiful. So when I saw some of these different artists and I saw what they were bringing and that what you were choosing from, I really love, and it's kind of crazy because I love all the artwork that you people do at your age and everything that you're designing, but I love the writing also. Of artwork and say, this moves me in this direction. And then you get together with the rest of the group and you all find a common ground to pull through the design. So much work goes into that. And I think people don't understand that it's that beginning that can really, really form a strong concept and a strong design. And one of the joys of theater is it's collaborative art form. I think I can say that for everybody who works in theater that is on the screen today. It's exciting to work with other artists. It's one of the things I love about theater is other people's perspective on the same topic.
Yeah.
You guys can chime in at any time too.
Go.
But yeah, I saw some really creative ideas coming out of there. And then the idea that you were justifying it and that you were look at what Don Quixote means, not just to me as a person, but to everyone who's ever come in contact with the story, with the musical. It is inspiring. And this is what I feel we want to bring to the surface about this script.
I completely agree with what you're saying. I think having everyone base the designs off an art image or something that really inspired them helped actually us then see the translation. It's like, it just shows how creative you when you take one image and then you explode with ideas, and people are able to come up with a set, costumes, everything based off this one thing. And so major props to everybody for doing that. I think, yes, having that explanation, because there were times where I was that textual, like, oh, this is what I meant by doing this, was really, really helpful. I mean, I think a lot of the times when you're reading a script, you sometimes skip through things that maybe you didn't find as much meaning to, but then like reading some of your examples and saying, oh, okay, yeah, I can see what led to your choice in that costume or in that set piece. So that was really fascinating to see how y'all's brain works, because a lot of times I didn't even think of, because I guess like we focus so much on our departments in terms of costume sets, like, that you just focus on the clean part, that you don't read so much into something that somebody else is like looking into. So it was great seeing all of that. And that's all I got.
Yeah, it's so important that you know why you make the choices you do. Or model or doing something because it's cool. I tell my students, you can't use the word cool to describe your choices because it's not enough. So having the piece of artwork and having the justification is so important, that you understand why you make the choices you do, and then you inform us on that. And it's great because the audience doesn't get that chance. They never know why you make the choices you do, but it's part of being a good professional designers, not just making choices because you like them or because it looks cool, but because it connects to the script, it connects to your inspiration, it resonates with you and with the director and with everybody. So it's so important that you tell us and tell yourself why you make the choices you do.
I think one thing, and I am not saying anything berating to anyway. This group events are actually harder than individual, because there are going to be times when your group is going to say, we're not going that direction. And that can be some of the most crushing things, because art is so personal to you. And so when you have to come into a meeting and what you have your heart set on gets struck, that's tough. I will admit it. I have cried like a baby over things that get cut from a show, and I can have them finished built and they'll get cut from a show. And I think that at this level in your career in theater and in high school, to experience that gives you so much knowledge on communication, on give and take, on being able to really come back with research and defense. If you really are that striven and you're like, no, I think you're wrong, you can still come back and say, here's some more research, look at it from this other angle. There's always collaboration. There's always some give and take. It's nobody's the dictator. It's a collaborative art form. And I think that learning these lessons now help you in all aspects of your life, because I don't care where you're working and what you're doing, there's going to be give and take in every aspect of your life.
Mm-hmm. Along those lines, one of the things I'd like to have you guys address somewhat, because you guys have your individual expertises and things like that, but like, what were some of the things that you guys noticed that were particularly effective at pulling the designs together across all of the elements? Like, what were some of the, maybe some examples, or ways, like how effective did we do as a job of making the world very clear across all 4 areas of design? What were some things that worked there?
I think going beyond the artwork, like the artwork is your concept image, but then finding a common theme that exists within that artwork that somehow connects to that artwork, and sliding that through very smoothly was really good for me. Or coming up with a common cause even to bring through the whole thing. It makes it more passionate also to me, and that just makes the drive even better and the work becomes even better.
Right.
I have to agree with having that explanation of how you guys interpreted and found more depth to the words, to your theme. That really helped make a full world. Of course, like I can say, I mean, I focus more on the costume world because that is my expertise, but seeing how everyone was able to tie things in, and like color palettes, things like that, like it was nice to have it laid out the way it was laid out, in terms of the way we saw it presentationally speaking. But yeah, I also like the whole spiel about collaborating. It's so important. I mean, that's all we ever do is collaborate, and it really is constantly like, oh, well, that's not gonna work. Oh, yes, it is. Here's why. And you know, it's like going back and forth. So I can't imagine like trying to do that during quarantine and calling each other and Zoom. I mean, we do that all the time, I guess, but I commend all of you for successfully putting on full productions. I mean, yeah, great, yeah, great work.
Yeah, see, this is the problem with going last. Everybody steals all my talking points. Yeah, I mean, it is. It's the additional language, right? It's beyond the image. It's how are you connecting your ideas to these emotions, or you know, how you found the image is always fascinating, because I had a similar reaction. I would look at a piece of art and then I'd read the description and go, oh my God, I never would have thought that by looking at that image. But then you go and you get to detail why, and then seeing that why have so many common themes through each area was just about the visual, but the understanding of the text, having that not just concept image, but having that through line of madness or isolation or you know, whatever it was, trash, you know, whatever it was, and some really creative directions. That was so interesting to see for me. And then, yeah, how it's laid out from inspiration board to, or just justification to inspiration and all those things. So, I mean, again, it really is that justification sets the tone for how you collaborated to whatever degree of success that turned out. And that's the challenge, because unless you're constantly communicating with one another and showing each other how your designs are evolving, you never know. You know, that's so important to what we do. You can't show up on the last day and say, well, here's what I created. You have to show each other things along the way. And sometimes that's challenging, and the pandemic only makes it worse. So, I mean, it was pretty clear, you know, in the different groups, how much communication was done, and how that led to a more successful design.
We'll make sure that we start the questions with Kevin this time, so he gets to talk first.
Excellent.
I was, in terms of the prompt, because one of the things that we've talked about that the group had to pay more attention to really than others was the notion of following the intent of the production and having a set that was there all of the time and had to be worked around the actors, having costumes that had to live on that set and yet be able to be transformed and on actors and actresses within that moment. And your hair and makeup people adjusting to that and making that happen on stage, and then your publicist trying to capture all of that into a very, you know, a poster that will draw us into that world. In terms of the success of that component of it, what kinds of observations can you make about that? Like,
Yeah,
were they tackling those things together as far as like the problem solving?
yeah, absolutely. What I loved seeing were moments where you could tell the designs had evolved together. The costume renderings had, you know, even in a smaller scale and simplified version, a version of the hair and makeup that was going to be seen in the hair and makeup component. That was really great. That was clear that there was communication happening. In terms of this text is so challenging because it can feel simple and it can feel like you want to do so much with it that to make it unique. And sometimes that, you know, getting off on a concept that takes you down a different direction can be challenging enough. But even just understanding we're in one location, and you know, the evolution of the play is so important that everything kind of stems from this trunk, right? It's the art of the storytelling that because of where they are, these very simple things in the trunk are how we tell that story. So I thought a lot of the groups did a really good job paying attention to that. I think for some that maybe got lost along the way because you get down this rabbit hole of design where you say, okay, well, this looks good here. No, oh, I can add this and then I can change this. And then eventually, you know, it's hard to come back to, okay, I've designed all of these things now. Where is the trunk? Can all of these things still come from that trunk? All important that you remember that prompt and that that choice by the authors, that it is very specific to one location and everything that's happening on stage comes from the environment. And that's, I mean, that's a challenge in its own. And then to have to try and conceptualize on top of that.
Not for the faint of heart here in Texas, let's say.
So yeah, it's lots of challenges there.
Anyone else want to speak to that?
You go.
Me?
Rosa, I feel like you're ready.
Well, so I love everything positive that's being said, but I also want to emphasize, like, as we design in a collaborative form, every choice has got to be part of the collaboration because it's slides in there and it's off of what everybody else's train is, we're going to have some kind of collision, so to say. So it doesn't matter if you're like, oh, well, it's just a small thing, I just want to add a little bit more to it. If we're not in the same world as everybody else, it's almost like an eyesore. Everybody's going to look at that one element the whole show, and that's what's going to be talked about. And so you have to know that no matter how brilliant it seems to you or how subtle it seems to you, if it's not part of the collaboration, it's going to throw everybody else's design off as well. And nobody ever wants to be that part of the design. You don't mean to be, it's there, but I think it should be said that when we're collaborating together, we can't go rogue. We've got to be in the collaboration all the way so that the whole show can succeed.
I feel like when we're working, it's always, at least team costumes is always in contact with set design, because we're always trying to, like, okay, what is going to complement what you're creating? Because obviously we work in separate spaces and we're making and designing, but at the end of the day, our costumes have to live on that stage. And by constantly being informed of what are you thinking for backdrops or wallpapers, anything that will help guide my color palette or will help guide your color, like set color palette. There's always a constant communications. You can't just you can never be too secretive about your designs, because if you are, and they are not going to start tech, and you're gonna see all the big things that weren't discussed. I mean, even if it seems like a minute detail, like if you're not open about it and sharing it with the team, then it will be an eyesore when it comes to tech, and then it will have to change. Overall artistry you're creating on stage. So I find that, like, for example, when we're working, it's always like, you know, like, what are you thinking for that scene? Like, we talk to the lighting design, they need to know what kind of fabrics we're gonna pick. It's always constant communicating, because then that will give you a successful image on stage. And so I find that, like, I liked when entries had, like, you could see that the costumes were incorporated into the set renderings and things like that, because then you could actually see those characters within that world. And it, I think it doesn't matter in terms level of artistry, because if someone's obviously more skilled in drawing costume renderings or someone's more skilled in set, but somehow incorporating both worlds and seeing those characters within that set helped me visualize more of, like, oh, okay, contact clearly, it makes sense. So yeah, the the incorporating of characters within the set, I think, is really successful and helps us see how it could actually function or how it's not going to work, depending on the concept.
We had an interesting comment that's really stuck with me yesterday with one of our marketing judges, because we don't have a marketing person on the panel. But one of the things that he said that struck me, for one thing, this whole contest this year inspired him that they are doing Don Quixote in their season next year, because he's like, I had to, we just had to, because he was so drawn into just the story that it is, and even more so. But as a digital artist in charge of marketing, he's trying to take that exact moment from that exact moment that this costume and this set and this hair and makeup, like all of those things that all came together into that audience is about to walk into. It's like, it's being able to have a handle on all of that, or you can't advertise what you don't know. And so you've got to know all of those things all the way along the path, because you're building that suspense, or you're building that anticipation of that world. And I think that that's something that all of the communication ultimately leads to your marketing person being able to take all of that and sell it to somebody else and get them at that perfect moment that captures, I think what he said was like, it captures the conflict, because all plays have a key conflict. And so we can tell from the get-go what we can sense it. It's not even always like a big old obvious picture, but we can sense it from everything that we're doing, that this world is ready for us to just enter into and totally be absorbed into. And go. Talk.
Yeah, I was so happy to see marketing get shine.
Mm-hmm.
They are like unsung heroes of our industry. I mean, they're basically the ones selling the excitement, like building up all the
Making
excitement
the
for our shows. Yeah, I mean, they really are the ones drawing in the crowd. Obviously, a lot of work is being done for them to showcase, but they are the ones coming up with the clever ideas and the clever posters and things like that. So that was so fun to see how people were creative enough to create scenic elements or costume elements or the hair and makeup hints at it to showcase the show. So props to marketing. That was so great to see that. I think one thing to consider, and again, I'm just gonna talk a little bit more costume wise. When you're prepping things for team marketing, you need to focus on presenting like the clearest scanned images, the best resolution you can present to team marketing, so that they can really, if they're showcasing your costumes, they need to be as well prepared as possible for when it goes into print or it's like on their images and posters, because sometimes you don't send them the necessary like DPI and then it's like, wow, is that what I drew? Like that doesn't look good. And the colors are off. So you have to be like, you have to make sure everyone's on the same page, because color, and specifically for marketing, making sure that everything is like matching to what you yourself designed. So just keep checking in with them and making sure you provide the adequate documents for team marketing to really create and go crazy and go wild, really promote the show.
Yeah, I hate to say that any one person holds more than any other person, but honestly, without marketing, if you can't get an audience in your theater, you don't have theater. We have to have an audience. I remember the first time I realized that probably was in grad school, that without that key element, we're just yelling at each other on stage. You have to have somebody who's really good, who can draw that audience in. And I want to say about what Wilbur said earlier about hiding your design. I think the worst thing is to be so shy that you don't want to share your creativity with others. I think make those bold decisions to show everything you have, your research, your designs. Don't sit on it because you're afraid yours isn't as good as somebody else's, especially if it comes down to drawing. There's so many other communication tools you can use. Those inspiration boards are so pivotal in inspiring the same feelings you have for the show to others. And I think that's a really I don't think, in my personal opinion, that the inspiration board necessarily needs to be scenery or the pieces of costume I want to use. I really feel like it needs to go deeper than that. It needs to be about the feelings that you felt while you were reading through the script and what images came to your mind then, and showing us that same passion and feeling that built up in you as you read that script. I want that on the inspiration board. I want to know what drove you towards that topic or that time period or that piece of research, and not necessarily just that piece of research itself. But I think anytime you're shy about your art, and art is personal, so it can be all the time. You can be like second guessing yourself all the time. Don't hide it. Express it, show it to people. It could be the most genius part of the whole design process for everybody.
Amen.
Yeah, I would say the more successful in the artwork, their research that stemmed from the artwork to the design, and not the projects that especially on the inspiration board, relied heavily on looking at other productions. Because then, you see another production, it's a good idea because for whatever reason you liked it, and so you picked something from that production to use, but you don't know why. You saw it, you liked it, so you took that idea, but you never really made the connection about why you're using it or how it's effective. So the more successful projects, I think, strayed away from that and really use the non-theater research, right? Images not from other productions to inspire the design.
I think another good note, as far as in the future, hopefully, is if you're going to talk really passionately about a part of the artwork or a part of your inspiration board in your paper, and then never use it, never see any hint of it in the actual design, that's kind of a red flag for me. I'm wanting to know, if you were that passionate about it, that you took the time to write about it and tell me why you love that part of the artwork or that part of your inspiration. Why is it not there? And especially if it was something that someone else talked about and used in theirs and everybody else used it, but then you were the one person who didn't. I really want to know why it got dropped and left off to the side. That's really something that, if you're going to be passionate about it in your writing, please find a way to incorporate it and show us that passion in your design.
I think that's something that we've tried to encourage. I was going to go over.
In terms of notes and presentation speaking, I know I said this for the costume meeting prior to this, but I think sometimes when we're presenting, we get too excited and we want to show a lot of elements, but at the end of the day, it's not like helping our cause. It's not selling what we're proposing. So we want to like put all these crazy elaborate things and decorative elements and things like that. But if, for example, you're doing sets or costumes, you need to focus on what you're pitching. You're pitching your design. You're not pitching a background. You're not pitching like decorative like details that have nothing to do with your like renderings, whether that's set or costumes. And in terms of like mood boards and seeing those inspirational things, it's okay to be crafty, but it has to be done in an artistic way that really showcases why it's setting the mood for your design. You can't just like glue a bunch of stuff and call it macaroni. Like, it has to be like, it has to serve a purpose. It can't just be to stick things on. Does that make sense? I mean, I think like it's also important to keep an eye on detail. If you're gluing things to certain elements, you need to make sure it's as clean as possible, because if you're scanning all this in, we're seeing it. Mm-hmm. We're seeing the amount of detail that and that's going on to these boards. And I mean, I think that really shows you know, it shows your eye in terms of how focused you are in presentation. Like presenting everything is the most important part, obviously. So you want to be as clean as possible. You want to make sure you don't miss anything. And if there, chop it out. We'll never know. But you know, like you really do have to look closely into everything to make sure it's clean, it's concise, it's giving the information that we need. I mean, you write like a beautiful explanation, but if the renderings aren't showcasing that, then there is a big disconnect. And then it's like, well, I don't understand which one I should believe, I guess, the text or the rendering.
Absolutely. I totally agree with that. Over the years, the backgrounds have gone through peaking as if the background is all that is important in the renderings. As I've watched these design competitions, then we'll have crash and we'll have some simplistic ones. But honestly, the reason why you're in the competition is because you have talent in rendering either set or costumes or makeup. Don't make it about the fancy background that I can digitally put in or the fancy background that I've collaged together. I mean, I think that's the main thing is don't draw focus away from the beautiful costume renderings and makeup renderings, set renderings that you're bringing forward. Make sure, like he said, make sure that is the focus. That is what people look at and go, oh my God, that's beautiful. And not necessarily a really cool computerized background and all. That's not going to be what holds your production together either. Just because your title blocks all match, just because your backgrounds all match, that's not what's going to say we did a collaboration. No, it's the actual renderings, it's the actual designs flowing together. That's actually what's going to show us that your collaboration worked together.
And it's true for marketing too. You know, I don't feel like because none of us focus on marketing, we haven't spoken on that. But there were a number where I said, well, the background is distracting because now I can't read the words that you put, or the text. You tried to pick a text that, or fancy.
So fancy, so busy.
Yeah, that I couldn't understand what it was, or the calendar. It was full of dots and colors and keys, and it just the layout. And the important thing is communicating information, just like it is for design. So in marketing, I mean, the texts and the backgrounds and everything, it became too much almost that I couldn't understand what I was looking at. So it's so true for all those things. And I feel like, kind of jumping now into a new topic, the projects that got very conceptual because of the artwork challenged me the most, because I started to lose sight of the importance of the play. So I want to caution teams moving forward and designers moving forward that it's great to have a conceptual approach, but you can't lose the meaning of the story with that. It becomes more about this idea of this new location or this new time or this new approach that you miss. Some of the groups kind of start to stray away from this essential component of Cervantes' journey and him telling his story in this setting that they can't escape from. I mean, especially scenically, I noticed that with a few of them. So don't get away from the meaning of the play and the text and the storytelling.
Yeah, I think you're right, Kevin. The play is the most important element. Like the acting's great, the directing's great, but honestly, we are telling an author's story, and that playwright's story is the main focus of everything. That's why we're here.
I think something, one of our other she was doing some of her research. She came across some interviews with Dale Wasserman. And when she found out that he felt like this was his most personal journey, like his most, he was most compelled to write this one of all of the stories that were out there. And, that starts to weigh on you, and you start to feel that importance, and you have somebody's treasure in your hands. Like you have a sense of that. And then being able to see that treasure is a story that has spanned as long as it has and stuck around as long as it has. It's like, there's a weightiness to that. There's a sense that it's a really important part of what you're doing. And you carry that weight as a designer going forward. Am I going to do it justice? Is my telling of the story going to elevate that literature in a way because it was somebody's baby? Right. So having all of the team pull together and feel that same sense of, I guess, loyalty, maybe the best word to put to it, to the script as its base.
I find that when you start designing a show and it's something that's been done a lot, yes, you want to be creative and you want to elevate it and create this new world, a new concept, but that is absolutely right. At the end of the day, you end up losing focus of what the show was about in the first place. You forget why we're here, how specific the text is to the story, that there almost is no reason why you have to
why here, why now,
make
right?
a crazy production.
Yeah, why here, why now?
Yeah, I mean,
if you go back to that, it's like, why here and why now is this story being told? And is this a way that's going to elevate it and make it more personal, make it connect in a new way to today's audience differently than it did before, but have the same impact that was intended? So, if you can be true to it that way.
And
right.
When you reconceptualize something in such a different way, you are saying, I'm doing this better than the playwright intended. And that's a dangerous game to play. So
it is. Sometimes I think it's almost like, okay, if the playwright were telling the story today, because it's just as relevant. I mean, it's just as relevant today as it ever has been. I mean, it's a story it's not the number 2 produced like story in the history of the world behind the Bible for nothing. It's powerful. But if Cervantes himself could come forth today and say, it's like, what would be a way that would relate to people now? I feel like there are ways. I feel like he would adjust and could do that, as long as it had that same impact, that it caught, all of the things that the characters go through. If you could reset it in such a way that still maintained that, I think even Cervantes himself might. Yeah.
Wait, have any questions?
Yeah, let's do that.
That's what
let's
I was wondering.
Yeah, we want to make sure that you guys all get opportunities for that.
Questions, comments?
I've got one from the chat. How's that?
Excellent. Yes.
There we go. Well, it's kind of a thing because it's a question, but it's also a statement. It's like, that's the challenge with this contest, though. Not straying too far from the original concept, but making your designs stand out. And so it's like, that's one of the things that people find is a challenge. It's like, they're being told you can't do it the way it's always been. You can't copy a previous production. You've got to make it stand out. But where do you find that opportunity, and how do you make your work stand out? You find that balance. Because you can't say just, well, they'll never change it.
Yeah, no. I mean, you're absolutely right. It is tricky, and that is the challenge, right? It's just like, I think for me, when I was reading some of the new adaptations of it, it just became a little bit convoluted. Like, wait, what are we talking about now? And like, oh, it's a completely different world, and this now means something that I don't like. The original text didn't even represent. So it's like trying to make sense of it in your head, to a point where now I'm not even looking at the designs. I'm just trying to make sense of how this ties in with the story, and trying to like compare, like, oh, okay, so that's now meaning this, and So now for me as a judge, now I'm like taken away from looking at the design to trying to understand. Found that it just gets confusing. I think like, yes, it's tricky when you're told like, well, we want to see a new version of it. Well, I mean, you can create a new version of it and be inspired by things, but it doesn't necessarily to mean you change the full context of the text.
Yeah.
It can't be a style
yeah.
in search of a design.
It's a tricky one.
A
Yeah.
style in search of a design is really good. Yeah.
Because that's sometimes like people like a certain style. And I always say steampunk because I love steampunk, because it's like, if I could make every place steampunk, I would, because I love steampunk, you know, it's like, it's an image that I love, but sometimes the play may or may not, you know, just depends on what worlds that you can do it. It's kind of like you can't, I think I addressed this at a conference at some point. I said, you can't just reset the play into a new world if there's a couple of commonalities. You know, take like the Crucible. Take the Crucible. It's like one of those places. But that same situation in the Crucible with those witch hunts, you could see that being translated into the McCarthy era, and being able to say that those witch hunts and things like that were just like the way people were searching out artists and calling them a witch because they were a communist. And, you know, there's so many parallels to it. And you could find, you know, where was the church's role in that and how was it represented? You have to figure out how every single aspect of that script is going to translate into the new world, not just a few of them that make a loose connection. If you're going to reset it, find that beautiful, golden, wonderful moment that has all the connections, because then you're talking super, super powerful, because it has reset it and it's saying this could happen again. This could happen in this day and age, and it's just as important. So that's kind of like maybe a way to explain it a little. Let's do here's some other questions. It said, how well did you see the commanding like in terms of the paintings? It's like, were because they had to pick one and then take it somewhere. We've had some comments at different points about people saying, well, it's like, I saw a picture and then I just saw nothing else of it. Or I saw a commanding image and you picked something different. But like, how well overall do you think everyone handled their commanding images? That was the question.
Go ahead. Yeah.
I mean, I think obviously it depended on the contestant. I think for some people it was like you saw an image and then it was like the literal adaptation of that image, like almost too literal, where it was like, well, practically functionality speaking, like how is this actually going to work? I mean, I love the art piece you selected as your inspiration, but does it necessarily have to translate exactly into the clothes, into the set, do you know what I mean? It's by its technicality,
Literally.
but more by the feeling that you get.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
The word that somebody used was
sometimes
evocative.
you do get inspired.
Yeah. The word somebody used was evocative.
Yeah, exactly. Like
it evokes.
Yeah,
something.
I mean, sometimes you do get inspired by techniques from art pieces, or like, oh, I can incorporate that into my set or my backdrop. But like at the end of the day, it doesn't have to be so literal. Like it isn't just inspiration. And you know what was great was seeing, so there were so many variations of the paintings people selected. So that was super exciting. I was shocked that even exists. That many Don Quixote inspired things existed.
Oh, honey.
So the fact that people were like, it was a different one after a different one, which was awesome, because I mean, it wasn't, you know, if we saw the same research image over and over again, it would have been boring. But so that was really exciting. But then at the end of the day, it's like, well, we don't have to go like too literal as a source of inspiration.
Right.
Oh, well, this was a question that says, what would you have done if you were like, did any of this inspire you, like in a way that you would have been like going, wow, like after this, it's like, I think I would have taken a certain approach, or I'll tell you, you know, we had our marketing judge that said that it was so inspiring to him to see some of these, that he was like, just very drawn to it. So like, if you could go in and launch your own production, I guess, you know, the question is posed.
Well, it's hard. You know, I think for any of us, if we ever have a script in our hand, immediately we're going to be imagining what it looks like. That's why we're in the business we're in. So yeah, and you see a piece of artwork, and I look at it having read the text, and I go, oh, I'm drawn to this element of it, or I'm drawn to this element of it. So yeah, and it was great to see some of the work that the students did, like, oh, that's a really good idea. I could absolutely see that being used in a production, or it's a great solution to the challenges that the script poses. And that was a huge thing for me, was functionality of the pieces and of everything. Because, again, it's so specific. You are in one location, everything comes from the stage, nobody leaves. So, that's kind of the danger about the conceptual approaches. You then end up having to problem solve issues you've created. And sometimes those solutions lead you too far. So, and I focus on this a lot. I would see these beautiful renderings of all these costumes, and I loved the changes that the characters went through. And then I looked at everything and I went, well, how is all that fitting in that trunk? If it didn't already exist in the space, where does it come from? Like, unless Sancho Panza is, unless the manservant is.
The magic bottomless trunk, Kevin.
Yeah.
Mary
Poppins.
Poppins bag.
It's the magic. It's there you go.
Well, I mean, for me, I've done this show twice in my professional career. And both times the director wanted the traditional time period and sent us off to find the collaboration and the concept within that. And none of them ever looked the same, just because if you choose to do it in a traditional setting, doesn't mean you're going to copy the original design. In fact, one thing I do that almost drives a couple of my directors crazy often is I'll tell them, they'll be like, oh, so-and-so did this production, if you want to look at it. I'm like, I absolutely do not want to look at that. Let me come up with some ideas and come to you. I absolutely hate regurgitation of another design. So, I mean, those are great once you're past what your conceptual, for like references of pieces and stuff. But I say steer away from other people's designs as part of your inspiration. Find your inspiration, find your design, because it doesn't matter the time period. There's so many ideas out there, so much to go for, and so much evoking different feelings in those time periods. So much happened in the world. There's not just one way or the highway.
Yeah. How about as far as any like skill kinds of things that you guys were saying, like overall, this is a certain skill or some kind of an area that students might want to work on between this year and next year, like some challenges or some things that you would like to see incorporated into the contest even that aren't there. I kind of realize now that we didn't do as much maybe as I envisioned with this contest of showing that contrast between what was going on in the prison and what was going on in the charades. I feel like, that's such a huge part of this show. And we addressed it in small ways within things, but like how we could capture that even more in the group, or I don't know, like that was just seems to be something that it's a very powerful part of the show that I'm not sure that we were able to pull out in the way we did the contest.
So before I became a costume designer, one of the things I did was technical direction and set design. And Kevin, tell me if you disagree, but I feel like there needs to be more guidance on a ground plan.
Okay.
For that aspect of the design. I really felt like some of the lacking information. It's a huge communication tool.
Yeah, and I did talk about that a bit yesterday, about giving some suggestions and resources, because like I said, the USITT standards are great and they apply really well, and they've been around for a long time, but I don't use them always when I'm drafting for a director, because I'm trying to go for clarity and for different things. I think it'd be great to see, especially in a group setting, the set rendering or the model with the costume, with the makeup, put it all together, make that mandatory so that we can see it all together and talk about, why did you choose this scene and what's happening, make it
That's
very
cool.
specific that way.
I
That's really
did
cool.
appreciate when the model or the rendering had the little image and it was the costumed character, not just the black body. The other thing is, again, I'm huge on communication tools. And so when I saw a rendering of a costume and somebody was sitting or crouched down or bent over or not in human proportions, I was like, as a crafts artisan professionally and as a draper, I was like, what do you want from me? Like, I don't understand what this is telling me sometimes. I can't see the what you want.
Yeah. It was, the costume was sketched and then there was a pose for no reason. We already have the sketch here. Like, so, you have to be mindful of the information you're providing. If you already gave me the sketch, that's all I needed. Also, we don't need like too funky of a poses, because then it's not informing me what the clothes actually is. And then I can't send that to like a draper or a costume technician to make the costume, because the information's not there. So, be mindful of your poses. I spoke in the costume thing, but be mindful of proportion. Like, we all want to draw elongated bodies and things like that, but at the end of the day, you're working with real people. So I think a lot of more practice should be made into making sure we understand proportion and different types of body, and especially if you are set period setting, silhouettes are really important. So making sure you have, you can't just put a puffy sleeve and call it period. Like, there has to be reasoning why you set this in that period. And if you do have reference and images there that will help guide you. Every period has its own distinct quality to it. I think what Kevin said, I did notice was, I think the set design department, I think that is probably the hardest thing to draw, is like, you drawing architecture and buildings and perspective. I mean, my props to all of you set designers. I mean, that is, for us costumes, obviously, like a lot of the times we can get away with squiggles and prettiness, but and suggestions of things. But for set, it's a lot more difficult. So I can understand that it is tricky to do all those forced perspectives and proportions and the drafting. I mean, but in that particular skill set, like,
Yeah.
they want a little bit more practice.
We've got some, hopefully, I'm enlisting Kevin to help me do some workshops on that. He's going to help me out.
Yeah, because for scenic, so many of them drew it from a perspective that's unrealistic, or took photos of a model from a place that nobody would ever see it from. So something more like you're sitting in the front, one of the front 5 or 6 rows of the audience, is so much more indicative of what the design is than seeing it from above, where nobody's ever going to see it from. So, because I start to look at, well, your sight lines are cutting off some of these things, and sight line is also a difficult thing, I think, to understand, because there's not a lot of masking. That it's so challenging. I mean, seeing it's so challenging. So, I think overall, probably the most successful as a package was the marketing.
Yeah.
I think part of that, but I do think that there's just so much more that's happening digitally, that I feel like we're gonna, that actually help to make group things easier, that once you've drawn or done some things, that there's ways to layer in and show how groups and stuff form together. And so we'll just be always looking for ways to help elevate that for our kiddos, because clearly we're carrying the weight of the world on our shoulders here in Texas and have to prepare all of our kiddos for the best.
Right. It's all on Texas right now.
It
Don't
is.
let Oklahoma talk to you about it, but Texas is where it's at. Texas.
Exactly. So I will see our 3 presenters in the next session, because there's another whole group waiting. And all of you guys from Division 1, we will see you on Monday night at 6 o'clock. And yeah, get your watch party on, and we will also talk about next year. Not gonna lie. Hope you're gonna like it.
Really nice work.
Yeah. Lovely.
We're so
stuff.
proud of you
Lovely.
guys. Congratulations.
Yeah.